Welcome to another edition of Badger Blitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. From the recruiting trail to inside Camp Randall Stadium to on the court at the Kohl Center, I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by Rivals.com national recruiting analyst Clint Cosgrove, who's back on home turf this week.
On home turf until where do I go next? LA on Monday or Tuesday.
What camp is that for?
It's actually not a camp. All of the national analyst team, we're going to get out there and just meet at the Yahoo offices and do some filming in the studio and all that fun stuff. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in makeup. So, Badgers have been on a run of bad luck. Let's face it. They haven't landed a recruit in a month or so, maybe even longer at this point. And so, at least in the 2023 class. And so a lot of fans, and rightfully so, moving their attention to 2024. John McNamara, publisher at BadgerBlitz.com, just dropped a Sweet 16 today as we're speaking. So I'm going to pepper you about the guys from the Midwest because let's face it, that's your wheelhouse. We're going to skip over the in-state kids for now. We're going to do a special in-state episode later in the summer. But for now, we're just going to look at the guys outside of the state of Wisconsin. So we'll look at the guys starting at the top. We've talked about Christian Bentancur before, the amazingly athletic tight end. Go back to our June 23rd episode if you want to get a bigger breakdown of Christian. So the next guy I want to start with, though, is Titus Cram, who's a tailback. He's, if you look at the way that Wisconsin has been recruiting tailbacks in this 2024 cycle, there's a clear priority on Corey Smith, who's the in-state kid from Catholic Memorial. But Titus Cram out of Bondurant Farrar in Iowa, he's made a couple visits up to Madison. He's a long, lanky kid. He's not exactly the frame you usually see at a running back. He's listed as an athlete. We know Wisconsin's looking at him as a back. What do you see when you put on the film, Clint?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. You mentioned Corey Smith, and, Corey's kind of that same type of longer, thinner. He's got a good frame. He's going to be a big kid, but, Titus is in that similar mold. He is extremely long. When you look at the film, he looks pretty thin, but I think part of the reason is he's got some, he's got a frame to him. He's got some height. We talked about his length. He's got a great burst, ball skills. He can hit the home run. I don't have verified track times on him off the top of my head, at least. But I like what he does in the open field. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands. He can stick his foot in the ground and get vertical. He does a good job, good vision of, especially in the zone scheme stuff of, seeing the hole and hitting it. He's, with his frame, I think he can end up being pretty big. All you got to do is look at a picture of him and you can really see, how long he is. So it doesn't necessarily fit the Braylon Edwards or the Braylon, look, or the Ron Danes that, or the Hebrew Hammers that we're used to.
He's no Braylon Allen.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So he's more of that change of pace back that actually we see Wisconsin, kind of looking for. We're a pro style offense. Wisconsin's been a pro style offense. They pounded the rock between the, in the trenches between the line of scrimmage. But this is a guy who can hit the edge. This is a guy who you could split out as a receiver. Similar skill set to Corey Smith, really. But I kind of like that about them and the way they're going about recruiting. It shows maybe a willingness or want to diversify the offense a little bit and, just not be as one-dimensional. So Titus Cram's definitely a guy who is an intriguing prospect. I think he can play a few different places. And, it makes sense that Wisconsin would get in on him. If Iowa goes all in on him, it's sometimes hard to win that battle, but you can. And, they're in on him early, and he's been to campus. And from what I've heard from you and others, that, he's intrigued by the Wisconsin program. So definitely a good target and a guy with a lot of upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think they're clearly targeting two running backs in this cycle, in the 2024 cycle, after two of the effectively four running backs that they took in 2021 didn't even make it to the fall season. and signing, and this incoming class that we've just had, there have been some, some position changes. We've seen guys, Jackson Acker, who came in as a tailback, has already moved to fullback. So they need to fill out that roster position a little bit more. One of the other kids that stood out to me in John's article was Ian Moore, big offensive tackle out of New Palestine, Indiana. Really, really good athleticism for his size. It's pretty astounding to see how smoothly a 6'6", 290, 16-year-old can move. I mean, it is like incredibly fluid athlete for that size. What do you see when you look at him?
I think Ian Moore has a chance to be very special. Listed at, the 6'6", 290, whatever, he's every bit of 6'6". And the crazy thing with him is a lot of guys at his age, they're growing into their frame and really learning the position, because offensive line is a technical position, especially on the edge when you get a lot of speed rushers at high school, undersized guys and stuff like that. The thing I like about Ian Moore is, he can take on speed, he can take on power. He's extremely long, and just overall body control for a kid at his size that's still growing into his body really blows me away. He's a great kid. He loves football. He wants to get coached up. He's asking questions when you see him at camps. And I think he's got a chance to be one of those guys who, you look 4 or 5 years from now and, he's in that first round discussion. Now that's saying a lot, but he's got every tool to be that type of player, especially when he fills out, especially when he gets stronger. But, I go back to the body control and just the way he can move laterally with little wasted motion and movement is like all of his movements are extremely efficient. He understands leverage. He understands, how important the ability to bend is. He doesn't, a lot of guys that you see, especially in these camp settings, they'll try to predict what the defensive end is going to do to them or defensive lineman. He's more of a read and react guy, and I really think that benefits him. And the reason he can do that is because his skill set is so powerful. He can go and, get in a quick set when a guy's coming with speed. And a lot of guys, especially the stronger defensive ends, your strong side defensive ends, then they'll go from speed to power when they realize that they're not getting past the edge on them. And they'll try to long arm him, and he can anchor down, and he uses his length to get hands on guys. And so he's just so multidimensional. He's a true offensive tackle, but at the same time, he could play anywhere on the line. I mean, I think he's got a chance to be a very, very special player. He's going to be a high 4-star kid, depending on his development. Really the sky's the limit. But I've seen him multiple times in person this offseason. I am a huge fan of Ian Moore. Each time that I see him, the kid is better. Something about him is better. He's learned something. He's done something. He's improved something. I think he really dissects his own film, his own performance. And like I said, he asks questions. He wants to be great. He's a smart kid, great personality. Personality-wise, I think he'd be a good Wisconsin fit as well. So,
yeah, I mean, you got to imagine Notre Dame's going to be in on him pretty big in the mix. Probably some of the other bigger, I assume Michigan will be a player. You got to imagine Ohio State will be in there too. It's going to be a big recruiting battle for him. As a Wisconsin fan, watching his film, watching the way that he pulls from the tackle position in the running game is just, it's a work of art. Like
how athletic is he?
It's like there's no wasted motion, and it's such a fluid motion for him, right? It's not like he's a natural runner. He's a natural runner. Despite his size, he runs very naturally. And one of the things that I've parroted from listening to Bill Simmons and reading Bill Simmons for so many years, you can see it in the way in certain guys move if they're going to have issues just in the way that they run. They naturally run. He has just beautiful natural movement form, and he seems to have a very good understanding of how to use his body. I am also imagine if he does track and field that he's an outstanding thrower because he has amazing body control.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he actually is a thrower. I could be wrong on that because so many of these top offensive linemen are throwers. But yeah, I mean, everything you say is spot on. He's just so fluid and everything. His hip mobility is another thing. Like everything just looks natural for him, and he plays with a natural bend. Like the kid's going to be a good player, and you're spot on as well. Yeah, I believe he'll be a national recruit. Everybody's going to be on him. So
For sure. For sure. A kid who's a little bit closer geographically to Wisconsin is KJ Parker. We've heard a little bit more about him after he picked up a Wisconsin offer after he camped in June. He's just been recruited as an athlete, right? He's got, basically from the quotes that he said, Wisconsin, a lot of schools are just recruiting him as an athlete, D-back or wide receiver, sort of come on into campus and we will see where you fit best. Just, we want you here on campus. How do you see him? Do you think he's got a higher ceiling on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball?
I mean, I love him on both sides of the ball. He's just a playmaker. Whether he's on defense or offense, the kid's making plays. Now, the interesting thing about him is he's going to be a pretty polished player when he gets to the college level on the defensive side of the ball, especially. I was talking to you about this earlier. But Matt Bowen from ESPN, who played at Iowa, played in the NFL, is actually the defensive backs coach at his high school. So he's getting coached up really well. I know Matt, sees him as a true athlete. He thinks that his highest upside, and sometimes us defensive guys are a little biased, but might be as a slot corner, a nickel, a safety. But he can really do it all. He can return kicks. He's just a dynamic player, a dynamic skill set. And, just personally, I think his highest upside is probably on the defensive side of the ball. But you're happy if you take him as a receiver or pretty much any other skill position as well. The kid's just an all-around playmaker. And, going back to, just Matt Bowen, I mean, I'll trust his eval as gospel, and he works with the kid every single day, and he's not going to BS you on anything. So KJ Parker definitely, I think he's probably under recruited for how good he is right now too. And he's also got a frame. He's maybe a little on the thin side right now, but he's got a frame. He's going to be plenty fine as far as size goes. He'll get in the college weight program, college meal program. But yeah, and I know when he was at the Wisconsin camp, he worked at both offense and defense. And I think that's part of the reason why they just said, we don't know what we're going to take him as, but we want this kid. And so he had a standout day on both sides of the ball when he was there.
All right. So, but let's say you're Paul Christen, you've got him. Where are you putting him?
I'm probably taking him as a nickel safety corner, that type of guy who, and I probably say this too much, and the day of kind of, you try to be positionless on defense to kind of hide things. I think that's where his highest upside can be. You always need a guy who can cover down on the slot. But he's the type of kid, he's a physical kid, even at his size before he gets really big. Like, he's not afraid to mix it up and tackle. Like he'll strike you. The kid strikes you. He's naturally explosive through contact. So, I mean, I'm going to take him on the defensive side of the ball, but, I wouldn't want to cover him either. So
I like that. I like him on the defensive side of the ball as well, just because I think, if you're a recruit, you've got to go into Wisconsin, you've got a higher upside as a defensive back than you probably do as a slot receiver. You're not going to see a lot of balls as a slot receiver at Wisconsin. Let's face it. So I think if you're going after Kim, especially with that mindset, Jim Leonard's defense, match made in heaven. Another Illinois kid is defensive end Eddie Turk. He is a kid who definitely has the right frame for a 3-4 end in the Jim Leonard system, especially even when they go to 2-4-5. It feels like he can definitely, kick inside a little bit more and still hold up pretty well against interior linemen using his bull rush. He's still got plenty of room to fill out. I was really impressed by his ability to shed blockers in the run game more than anything. That was actually really what stood out to me when I watched him. I know you know him well. Break down Eddie for us.
So Eddie is a kid that's been, pretty special and on radar since he was a freshman in high school. He always had that frame. Now he's really filled out. He's probably more of an interior guy at this point, in my opinion. He could be a 3-4 end. He can play really across the line. He's, his skill set, like he's strong. He works at it. Great personality. We get along really well because we both have red hair. And, so that's big for me in my evaluation. Totally kidding. But the other thing with Eddie, though, is he might end up on the offensive line as well. He's got a very high upside as an offensive lineman. So some schools are recruiting as defensive line. Most of them are. But I know there's other coaches that I've talked to in the Big Ten that have looked at him, as an offensive lineman as well. So I think that says a lot about his athletic ability and his dedication to the game. I mean, the kid loves football. Another guy who would fit in great in the Wisconsin program. But I'm a fan of Eddie. I was so sure that he was going to be a dominant D lineman when he was a freshman, but just the way he's grown and developed, and you think of the money that some of these offensive linemen are making, and I think he can be a standout on either side of the ball. And I really don't know what he's going to end up at this point. And it probably depends on the school that he ends up choosing, because I don't think he's going to make his decision based off position that he plays. He's going to make his decision based off where he feels most comfortable, where he connects with the coaches, and where he can probably get on the field early. So, but Eddie is definitely he's a talent, and he's a tough kid, and he's going to be a good football player.
Definitely. Well, speaking of that, on the line, one of the guys that you've seen up close and personal recently is defensive tackle Justin Scott. He's currently ranked 12th overall, not at the defensive tackle position, not in the Midwest, in the entire nation for the 2024 class. I mean, Clint, let's face it, he's going to be a 5-star sooner or later. Because, oh my goodness, we talked about athleticism with Ian Moore, and it's very impressive. Justin Scott's a different breed. That kid, the size, athleticism combination, when you see him, he's fast, he's as fast as the D-backs on his team at 305 pounds. So 2-part question for you. A, is Wisconsin actually a legit player for him? And B, what makes him just so special?
Which one do you want me to start with?
Let's start with the quick. Yes or no? Is Wisconsin a legit player for him at this point in his recruitment?
At this point in his recruitment, I would say Wisconsin is a legit player for him. Now, I haven't gone in depth with Justin about it. He was at Notre Dame yesterday. I was at his practice on Monday, and you got to see how athletic he was when I shared that clip with you of them running gassers at the end of the practice. I mean, the kid's 6'5", 308 pounds. He just really got into the weight room recently, added 150 pounds to his squat in a month. He's become a grinder in the weight room. He is just so light on his feet, so smooth. And the fun part about being at practice the other day is it was an offensive emphasis practice. He was playing offensive line the entire time. And I've never really thought about him as an offensive lineman, but then you see him out there and I'm like, good Lord. I mean, this, he looks like a pro already. He's just so light on his feet, natural bend. He runs, he's smooth, he can change direction. He's twitched up. His only weakness is he's brand new to football. People don't realize the kid played soccer and basketball growing up. Last year was his first year playing varsity football, and he got an offer 3 games into the season, just based off his raw ability. The kid is special. I will definitely be politicking for a 5-star. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next rankings, but it's going to happen at some point, because you just don't find kids like him that are his size that want to learn, that are relatively new to the game, yet at the same time just so dominant physically and athletically that they are already, it appears, college ready. He's just a very special player. In the Midwest, you don't see a lot of those guys. This is a national recruit, SEC, top Alabama type player all day, every day. Now, when I did ask him, who stands out early in your recruitment, he did mention schools close to home. So Wisconsin was one of the teams that he named. And, just some conversations that I've had, I do think Wisconsin, he has legitimate interest. One thing with that is he's only been to a few schools. He's only been to a few visits. He mentioned some other schools as well. But as of right now, I'd say Wisconsin has a shot. And he would, I'm trying to think back. He might be, if they were able to land him, the highest rated recruit that they have, they've ever landed, as long as something doesn't happen and he doesn't drop or anything like that. But and then just seeing him yesterday, knowing that he can play offensive line or defensive line, and the kid looks like a pro, and he's barely even played football. So
yeah, I'm sure someone in the den will correct me. I think it's either Nolan Rucci or Josh Oglesby is the top in the Rivals.com era from Rivals.com rating. It's one of those two, I believe.
I think it's Oglesby.
I think it's Oglesby too. Oglesby. The crazy thing is Oglesby and Clay were the same year, and they were both 5 stars.
Wow. Oglesby had a lot of injury issues, didn't he?
A lot of injury issues, yeah.
Yeah, because he could have been a special player. He was a special talent, great size, great kid.
His knees gave out on him. It was a shame. His knees really gave out on him. So speaking of, though, we talked about Scott potentially on the defensive line. One of the questions from the Badgers Den this week was, let's talk a little bit about 2024 defensive line, because you got to keep them churning, especially in that 3-4. They're taking a lot of beating. They're going to need to beef up the defensive line. Any couple guys stand out to you in the Midwest to sort of keep an eye on?
Yeah, one thing that, like, when I first started scouting in Illinois, like, defensive line was the position in Illinois, and it's kind of fallen off a little bit over the years. Surprisingly enough, the receiver position in Illinois has really kind of like taken the spot as that, well, along with the offensive line, as that, like, highly coveted player from Illinois. But there are some good players. And, with these defensive linemen, like you said, you got to get in on them early, even if they might not be a long-term take, even if you're still evaluating them, you still got to love them up early, because defensive linemen come at a premium, especially as you get closer to signing day. You're always seeing bigger teams poach smaller teams for defensive linemen, and you're not finding too many of those guys that just pop up their senior year, unless they have a big growth spurt, or they're, we had a kid at Morgan Park in Chicago 2 years ago who had never played football before, but his basketball coach is like, listen, 6'5" is a dime a dozen. You're going to go and play football. And Morgan Park's a big time basketball team. And it says a lot that kid ended up signing with Arizona and had offers, 3 weeks into his senior season. So you do have those type of players, but to me, you got to find those diamonds in the rough early on. You love up the big time guys like Justin Scott. You go after him, you shoot your shot. But as far as some maybe underrated guys or under the radar guys, there's a kid named Demetrius Jones out of Lutheran North in St. Louis. Ever since he was an 8th grader or a freshman, coaches have been talking about him. I didn't know if he'd be an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. He was a big kid. He's really come together physically. He's increased his twitch, foot speed, his explosiveness off the ball. His only offer right now, I believe, is Iowa State. He's a kid that I see having some upside. He's a kid that will have a chance, and a kid that he has really grown on me over time. Like I said, a lot of guys in the area in St. Louis that I trust, talked him up. And sometimes, when that happens, you just expect so much of a kid. And so, but in my latest evaluations of him, really like him. I think Demetrius Jones will be a multi-power 5 offer kid on the defensive line, maybe even the offensive line. But you see him flash on film. I know you took a look at it, Matt. He's raw right now.
The athleticism stands out for sure. Like, he's clearly still a little bit raw, but it definitely shows out.
Yeah. And, that's a school that's going to produce players, and you want to talk about a St. Louis pipeline. I mean, he's a kid that I get in on early. If I'm not ready to offer him, maybe I love him up, but he's a kid that you get on, in my opinion. Another one that, took a quick glimpse of the film is Dylan Johnson out of Joliet Catholic. And, he's that 6'2", 270-pound type defensive lineman. The more you watch the film, the more you like him. He's explosive. He's a high motor kid. He can chase the quarterback. He's got some interior pass rush to him. He's got room for growth. He's going to fill out. He does a pretty good job with his hands right now. I like his feet. But he's a young kid. So, like, these young guys with these big bodies, to see them move like that is pretty impressive. Joliet Catholics, they get coached up over there. That is a hard-nosed program. Those kids will hit you, and they've been putting out some players. So Dylan only has offers from Illinois State, Ball State, Eastern Michigan right now, I believe. But he's a kid that I could see blowing up. The big thing with him is people are going to want to see him in person. Is he 6 foot or is he 6'2"? And I think a lot of his upside will be determined based off of his growth and development. But as far as athleticism goes, and a guy who does have the frame and the upside, Dylan Johnson is a kid that I really like out of the state of Illinois that I'll get a chance to see playing games this season. So I'm excited to watch him as well. Definitely a kid that I'm at least poking around at, at least watching the film, if nothing else. So, and that's a school that's going to be highly recruited. So there's going to be a lot of coaches through there, and don't be surprised if he's starts picking up more offers sooner than later, especially after that first 3-game film comes out.
For sure. Excellent. Well, listen, Clint, as always, thank you for your insight, buddy. This is, I think we broke down a lot of interesting 2024 kids here. We'll definitely have, more questions next week, as always. Make sure to follow Clint on all the social medias at @rivals_Clint. I'm at _Perko_ on Twitter. And until next time, we'll see you in the den.
Well, Ben, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it, man. It's the highlight of my week, man. Let's go.
Yes, sir.